Thank you all so much for being here. I'm Christine Palm. I'm the state representative for these beautiful river towns, Chester, Deep River, Essex, and Haddam. I'm also the vice chair of the Environment Committee at the General Assembly, and it is my true honor to have all of you here. We are surrounded by experts in Hydrilla. And in case those of you who are here don't know what it looks like or what it is, we have our visual aid. Deceptively pretty. It's also called water thyme, and it's THYME. It sounds like something you might want to cook with. But Hydrilla verticillata is anything but that. It is one of the most pernicious environmental plagues that we have here in Connecticut, and it's only getting worse. You will hear from experts who know far more than I about this. What I can tell you is that by their nature, invasives invade. When you describe Hydrilla, it sounds almost like some superhero. It can thrive in poor conditions. It causes algae bloom. It grows several inches a day. It sounds almost like a cartoon monster. It even hosts a cyanobacteria, a bacteria that actually can punch holes in the brains of eagles. It sounds like something made up from a science fiction. It's not. You will hear from experts about really how devastating this is. The good news is we have partnerships federally, locally, municipally, statewide, working every day to eradicate this problem, which is taking not only an enormous environmental toll, but an economic toll throughout our state. I don't think we have specific figures on Connecticut. Perhaps one of the speakers does have that. But I can tell you that Florida, where Hydrilla originated because some hapless person threw it out of a fish tank into a canal in the late 50s, early 60s, and now it's everywhere. They spent about $32 million a year of taxpayer funds trying to eradicate Hydrilla in Florida. So the devastating effects on our tourism industry, recreational boating, everything connected with tourism, but also for those of us who are environmentalists, even if there were no economic impact, we are charged with protecting the earth that we share. And this is something that is starting to creep ever inward to rivers, to lakes, to ponds. So we're here today to learn about a process the Army Corps of Engineers, who unfortunately at the last minute couldn't make it, but happily we do have folks here who know and are participating in this experiment to explain what we're doing in the waterways. A few years ago, I was very pleased during the 2022 legislative session to be able to create the Office of Aquatic Invasive Species at the Connecticut Agriculture Experiment Station. They are sort of the quarterback of the team, and they are charged with working with our federal partners, with DEEP, which is here today, with all kinds of the Lakes and Ponds Association, and they will tell more about their work because heretofore there was not a lot of coordination being done. And so I'm very pleased that we're here gathered with these experts who will tell you what they are doing, what the plans are, and I would like to urge all of you from the public to get involved, helping us pass legislation, helping us get more funding for the research and mitigation of this plant. The responsibility is on all of us. These folks behind me have the expertise, but you also have a voice, which is needed desperately at the Capitol. So with that, I would like to introduce Greg Bugbee, who is the Associate Scientist for CAES, the Connecticut Agriculture Experiment Station, which houses the Office of Aquatics. And he will explain to you what this process is all about. Greg?
Well, thank you, Christine. It's great to be here, and it's great to sort of put forth information on the Hydrilla issue and other aquatic invasive plant issues that's going on in the state of Connecticut. I first want to thank Christine Palm for her efforts, as well as others, but certainly she led the charge to establish this Office of Aquatic Invasive Species at the Agricultural Station. And that is, I think, a great step towards bringing forth this problem to the public and offering better solutions than we had before. Prior to that, we had no real formal funding mechanism to do this type of work at the agricultural station. And with her efforts, we were able to form this office. We now have 3 employees. I'm just going to quickly introduce Summer Stebbins. He's there with our invasive guides. You feel free to get one. Riley Doherty, she's another one. And then our most recent hiree is Dr. Jeremiah Foley. So with them, I think we got a great team to move forward with our office and help the citizens of the state. So what is going on right now? First of all, I want to certainly we should acknowledge Senator Blumenthal here, because he and others have got funding for the river at the federal level for the Army Corps of Engineers, and their representative could not be here today. But I'm going to sort of talk about what's going on. I know I don't have a lot of time with the river right now, with both the agricultural station and the Army Corps work. When both our office and the Corps' funding was procured, there was immediate meetings to get things going. And throughout the winter, we had many meetings as to where we're going to go from here. And it was felt that the first step was to get on the river. We already had, at the agricultural station, done a complete survey of the river and determined that this hydrilla problem was primarily a Connecticut problem. It is in southern Massachusetts from Agawam south, but ground zero is here in Connecticut. And we were able to determine through DNA sequencing that this strain in Connecticut is different than anything else found in the world and has different characteristics and appears to be much more robust and potentially more destructive. So we were able to determine that it's in Connecticut. Connecticut's the ground zero for it. There's about 1,000 acres in the river system right now, in the marinas, in coves, in tributaries, in many cases, basically engulfing entire coves and tributaries, so it's basically impassable. So where are we? Well, we are at this point working with the Corps and with them at the lead to do what is called dye testing in certain test areas where some management might occur. It's important before anything is done to make sure that there is some information on where the water moves. If an herbicide is chosen, what concentrations will remain in for what length of time, and that sort of thing. So there is currently going on these dye tests. It was completed in Keeney Cove up in East Hartford last week. The dye consists of non-toxic material that gives a pinkish red hue to the water for a very short time. In Keeney Cove, you could barely see it after, it was applied. It was diluted and the water wasn't all that clear anyway. So it's not like you're going to see blood red water or something coming down the river. But this dye mimics herbicides, if you will, and how long they might last. It's very important before anything is decided that information is put forth as to what would be the consequences of what we do and how it can be done in an environmentally safe manner. So that's what's going on right now. It's completely non-toxic dyes that are being put in 5 or so locations. Will be happening throughout the summer, and that is what is occurring now. With that information, the Corps and us and others will get together and try to put forth some options for best management practices. And that will come forth probably this fall and winter. And with that, there'll be a fair amount of discussions with the Connecticut DEP folks on what can be used and them as the regulators, what will be needed in order to move forward. There'll be a lot of public discussions, public meetings, and so that's where we are right now. I don't want to take up too much time, and I'll turn it back. I'll be here for questions while we're here today.
I was going to suggest, can you put your book under here, because this thing is going to keep tipping.
Okay, all right. This is the invasive plant guide. There's plenty over there, but it also works as a stand holder.
Put the
Just don't lean on it. Yeah, when you.
put the hydrilla underneath.
Yeah, right. Thank you. Margot Burns is my native neighbor in Chester. She's a wonderful environmentalist. She's a senior environmental planner for the Lower Connecticut Valley River COG. And for those of you that don't know, the River COGs are wonderful partners working with towns and state officials on problems such as this. Margot, I'm not sure what your topic is, but take it away.
I'd just like to thank everyone for coming to our beautiful region. This is the heart of it. And I just wanted to speak to the importance of partnerships in dealing with such a significant issue as this one. Many of them are here, and Greg mentioned all of them. And there are some that aren't here today that are responsible for the wonderful public outreach materials, Connecticut Resource Conservation Development Area, and also Connecticut River Gateway Commission. They created the Hydrilla video, Hydrilla invading the Connecticut River. I think that most everyone has seen and really publicized the issue and brought attention to it. I also wanted to just talk about not only the relationships and the partnerships between our legislators at all levels of government, between our towns, but also between our private and public organizations and their volunteers that have helped so much in the lower river, not only to bring attention to the hydrilla issue, but another terrible invasive we're working on, and that is water chestnut. And yesterday I got an email from John Hall of the Jonah Center, another organization very instrumental in the conservation of the lower Connecticut River, of a volunteer who had kayaked a route around the Connecticut River checking for water chestnut, and how valuable that one volunteer is in fighting the things that we are working on in Lower River. He found 2 water chestnut plants on his foray yesterday, and those 2 water chestnut plants being pulled probably saved a ton of money and a ton of volunteer time for that issue. So it's just so incredible. We have an incredible conservation community in the Lower River. We love our home. It's not only our home, it's your home. It's the home for the state of Connecticut and even our nation. We have so many public parks and forests in our region. Most of the shoreline, a good portion of it, of the Lower Connecticut River, is publicly accessible land. So I just want to emphasize that point, that this is all of ours home.
Absolutely.
And thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Margot. So speaking of partnerships, we in Connecticut are blessed with our congressional delegation that really has our back and does a wonderful job. And my dear friend, and more importantly, very competent, wonderful, hardworking Senator Richard Blumenthal will talk about what's going on federally.
Thank you, Christine. First of all, big thanks to Christine for her leadership, her perseverance, and to all of you who are here. Really, you are the advocates and experts on this topic and on so much that affects our environment in this really precious part of the world. So thanks for your leadership. I'm regretful that the Corps of Engineers couldn't be here because they're going to be playing a vital role. And I'm here. I think our delegation is united on this issue, but I have helped to lead it as a member of the Armed Services Committee, because the Army Corps of Engineers reports to us as a part of the Army. I think there are 2 questions here. Why should we care, and what should we do? Because you look at something like this stuff, it's green. It's green, it must be good. Not really. This stuff is a monstrous threat to other wildlife, to ecology, to the economics, and to the environmental health of the Connecticut River and ponds, lakes, waterways, all of them at risk because of this invasive species, invasive aquatic species. Christine compared it to comic book monster. This stuff can grow a couple of inches a day, literally. And what it does then is it harbors dangerous bacteria, it strangles other wildlife, it threatens the navigable capacity of rivers, of basins, whether it's Keeney Cove or Selden Cove, the Chester Boat Basin. This stuff is a clear and present danger, and more than just a science fiction fantasy, it poses real life dangers to Connecticut ecology, economics, and environmental quality. So the question is, what do we do about it? And the answer is that the Army Corps of Engineers needs more than just a one-year appropriation. We need a long-term, sustained effort, because this stuff doesn't go away in a year. It is enormously resilient. It is survivable under really some of the most hostile conditions. It is one of the most fearsome, ferocious, invasive aquatic species because it is so resilient. And so I am proposing a long-term Connecticut River Hydrilla program. We've appropriated $6 million per year up to now. It needs to be a $25 million or more program.
Thank you.
That will provide the resources that are necessary to sustain a longer-term program. Just as this stuff lives under the harshest conditions, we need to provide a sustained and resilient program to fight it. And we have the means to do so. It begins with the tracking program, the use of dye to gather more research and to know more about it. But what we really need long-term is a sustained commitment from the federal government, more than just $6 million a year, which is what we have fought for and we've obtained so far, but a $25 million or more program for the Army Corps of Engineers to make sure that we match the ferocity of this invasive aquatic species with our own determination and persistence. So,
Wonderful.
thank you, Christine. Glad to be here. And again, many thanks to all of you.
Thank you, Senator. That is really good news. Wow. So speaking of partnerships, protection of the environment historically has been a nonpartisan, a bipartisan effort. I am very pleased that we're being joined by my colleague, Devin Carney, who represents Lyme, Old Saybrook, and a little sliver of Westbrook, correct?
All right. Thank you all for coming here, and a huge thank you to Representative Palm for her leadership on this issue. I mean, she really has done an incredible job fighting against Hydrilla and supporting not only the communities she represents, but really all the communities along the Connecticut River in our state. And of course, thank you to Senator Blumenthal for coming. It's always great to have him here and bringing good news on the stuff he's fighting for, particularly on this issue. When Representative Palm was saying it kind of looks like a monster, all I was thinking of is maybe this is how DC Comics got the inspiration for Swamp Thing. But it's really, I mean, this is so vital, and it brings so many different groups together. As Representative Palm was saying, Republicans, Democrats, boaters, environmentalists, government. I mean, everyone really dislikes Hydrilla. I don't think there's a Hydrilla lobby. Not yet. But it really impacts our local aquatic plant life. It affects recreation. It affects our environment. It really overall affects our quality of life here along the river. And as we've heard, this can expand very rapidly, very easily. And I think part of it is really getting the word out there to folks that even if they take a little piece off of that and throw it in an area where there is no Hydrilla, it will expand and it will grow and it will cause problems. It's caused a lot of problems in the town of Lyme that I represent and across the river valley. And I do want to say a special thank you to all the experts that are here, the Office of the Connecticut Agricultural Experiment Station and Invasive Aquatic Plant Program. And thank you to Representative Palm for pushing to create that. And And together, I know we can fight this, and hopefully we will win. So thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Carney. We have two folks here from the Department of Environmental and DEEP, and one is an expert in the effect on fisheries in particular, and the other on boating. So I'm going to ask Gwendolyn Wendy Flynn and Matt Godkowski to come up and talk.
Hey, good morning, everyone. So whenever a new species is moving into an area where it's not native, it can be extremely difficult to predict what the ecological impacts of that might be. This is especially true when you have a species like Hydrilla that has the ability to rapidly colonize new areas and potentially displace native species. We know that aquatic plant species are extremely important for many species of fish and wildlife. They provide important spawning and nursery habitat for many species. They also provide important cover and hiding areas for species that are looking to feed or looking to escape predators. And we're finding that aquatic plant species also host important invertebrates that we're finding are very important food sources for some of our migratory species like shad and river herring. So at Connecticut Deep, we feel that a proactive approach may be one of the best tools that we have towards preventing the spread and managing hydrilla in the state. So one of the activities that we're doing to that end is to hire 2 aquatic invasive species stewards who provide education and outreach at boat launches along the Connecticut River. These folks are out at approximately 20 boat launches per week, and they're interacting with boaters, raising awareness about the issue of hydrilla, and also providing boaters with some sense of ways that they can prevent and mitigate the spread of hydrilla to other water bodies. We've also recently entered into a cooperative agreement with UConn to hire a statewide aquatic invasive species coordinator. We're hoping that this person is going to help lead some of our outreach and education efforts, as well as ensure that all of the different groups in the state that are working on aquatic invasive species are collaborating together in the best way possible. So we're really interested in learning more about what the Army Corps of Engineers can learn from their research and seeing what sort of tools that they can come up with to help us mitigate the spread of hydrilla in Connecticut.
Hi, I'm Wendy Flynn from the Deep Boating Division. I did want to say thank you to everyone for setting this up for us today. I am going to talk a little bit about boaters, a little bit about what we encourage boaters to do to help prevent the spread of invasive species. So we have, similar to how Matt was saying that there's the AIS stewards, we have boating education assistants who go to our 117 state boat launches and interact with boaters talking about clean and safe boating practices. So on the safe side, they talk about life jackets, flares, whistles, sound producing devices, stuff like that. On the clean side, they talk about preventing the spread of invasive species. They also conduct a voluntary inspection, just like the lake stewards do. So it's just a run through of walking around their vessel and talking to the boater about where hitchhikers can attach to their vessel or their trailer, and just encouraging them to walk around. And as they're showing them how to do the inspection, hopefully our hope is that the boater will next time do the inspection on their own, even if it's just a visual, looking under the bunks or the rollers or anything like that, just to make sure that they have no plant fragments going from one water body to the next. It's particularly important on the Connecticut River. We don't want hydrilla spreading anywhere else. So when our BEAs are walking around and doing the inspections, they do talk about the clean, drain, dry method, which the clean is checking and removing all visible plant fragments, debris, anything like that. That also is in line with our law that we have, that it's illegal to transport any plant fragment, any invasive species on the trailer. Drain is drain anywhere that could hold water. Bilge area, ballast tanks, there are live wells, anywhere that can hold water, drain it when you're at the launch. Don't drive away with, water. We don't want that spreading, to another water body. And dry is, we encourage people to, if their boat's on a trailer, try to dry it for, about a week before they go to the next water body. That's not always possible, so we do encourage the wash option, which isn't really part of Clean Drain Dry, but it's an alternative to drying. And that's just, washing with soap and water or vinegar, sometimes bleach, but bleach isn't always the best in a live well. It can kill the fish for next time. So it's not a huge thing we advocate. So, the hope is that our BEAs will, encourage the boaters to do the right thing for the next time, empowering the boaters so that they prevent the spread, or that they can help prevent the spread, among other water bodies. The other thing I wanted to talk about is a couple years ago, there was a fee added on to boat registrations. It's for the invasive species stamp. So anyone who's going to be boating in inland waters of the state has to pay a fee, and that fee goes into, it created a grant program for the control, research, and education on invasive species. And we've been active for a couple of years. We've given out some grants. It's available to municipalities, nonprofits, like lake associations, stuff, groups like that. And we expect that the request for proposals will go out in late fall, early winter. So if anybody knows anybody with a lake organization, please pass that along. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. I'm so glad you mentioned the invasive species stamp. Sometimes the legislature has an unhappy habit of raiding other pots of money that were designated for one thing, and we need to protect that pool of money that comes as a result of the stamp, which is a very modest fee, a little bit higher for out-of-staters, and we've lowered it back because of federal regulations. But it's a terribly important source of income for the state to use with these very important, small but significant grants that Wendy mentioned. And similarly with the passport to the parks, we have to make sure we protect those little pools of money. So speaking of boating, I'd like to invite up two of our wonderful local seafaring fellows, Bob Petzold, who was gracious enough to host us today, and Captain Mark Yucknott, and they are going to talk to you about, from their very personal perspective, the changes they see on the river and what they would like us to know. Come on up, fellas. Thank you.
Go ahead. Kick it off? Yeah, go ahead. Thank you for everybody for joining us here at Chester Boat Basin. Truly thrilled with the turnout today and excited to be surrounded by all these experts. And, we only had the experts together because of Representative Palm's leadership. So I thank her, I thank the other elected officials for supporting us, supporting her. I've spent 50 years of my life every day on the Connecticut River. And when Representative Palm says an invasive species, it really is an invasion. Over the last 6 years, we've really seen it take hold and really grow. I see it here in our Chester location, I see it in our Portland location, and it's really choking off the Connecticut River. You would see normally here, our power boats coming in and out of here, they'd be wrapped, their props would be wrapped in this Hydrilla material. I'd have to get a contractor in here to remediate it, which really doesn't solve the problem. It solves my short-term problem, which allows me to get my boats in and out of the marina. But again, those fragments that are going elsewhere are going to just rejuvenate and grow in another location. So I'm really thrilled that we're looking at a overall approach to take care of this on the whole Connecticut River. It's probably one time in my life where all water activities are united. We have the kayakers, we have the canoers, we have the power boaters, we have the swimmers, we have the fishermen, all united against this invasive species. So again, thank you, for all your efforts here, and we're excited to get this taken care of. So,
Thank you,
Mark?
Bob, so much.
Sure.
Well, I really can't say it any better than he did. Been on the river for a long, long time. We started a boat called the River Quest boat down in Essex a long time ago, about 23 years ago. And there really was very little hydrilla back in those days. And I have noticed over the years it's gotten better, worse and worse, not better, worse. Places that we were able to take people into, we cannot do that anymore. It's just inundated with this material. It gets, like Bob said, around your props. We can't afford to get stuck in places like that, and we have 65 passengers on the back. It would be too dangerous to do those things. Water chestnuts, another problem. I've been involved recently after we sold RiverQuest to try to help out a little bit in picking that up. And I think that's going to be another major problem on the Connecticut River. It already is in some places. So, Senator, it's great that you're really helping out.
Thank you.
And we appreciate it. And really, that's about all I have to say. I have plenty of time to answer questions later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Captain. All right, so our last speaker, saving best for last. My wonderful new-ish colleague at the Connecticut River Conservancy, Ria Drozdenko. I want to invite you. Where are you? This young woman has done yeoman's duty helping coordinate all of us organizing this, and she's really a leader in this, and I'm so grateful for your partnership.
Thank you so much, Christine, and thank you so much, everyone, for being here. My name is Ria Drozdenko. I work for the Connecticut River Conservancy as a river steward. We are a strong voice for the entire Connecticut River watershed throughout 4 states. We work to protect and advocate for our rivers and our communities as well. It's really an honor to be here today amongst researchers and lawmakers and advocates and the boating community, and it's great to be all here together because we're really concerned about the threat that Hydrilla poses to the Connecticut River. Like people have said, it's a threat to our ecosystems, including our native plants and wildlife, but it's also providing or creating detrimental economic and recreational impacts. So like others have said, I'm out on the Connecticut River a lot, both in my personal life and for work, of course. I spent my weekend canoeing down the Connecticut River, and in the aftermath of July's flooding, you could see these long, dried up strings of hydrilla clinging to the trees. It was less than pleasant. But yeah, so I'm really seeing the habitat degradation firsthand, not only on the river, but also its many tributaries and coves. A few people have mentioned invasive water chestnut, so we actually organize volunteers and hire seasonal staff through the CT Deep's AIS grant. Thank you, folks, for that. And we hand pull invasive water chestnuts in places like the Mattabassett River and Keeney Cove. At this point in the year, these sites are almost unnavigable by kayak because it's so thick and choked out with hydrilla. 2 of our seasonal staff are actually here today. Brooke and Maddie, if you want to give a wave. These guys are on the front line several times a week. If you want to chat with them, they're out there every day. And we also organize recreational events at CRC. So we're getting folks out onto the water, getting communities connected to their rivers. And even though it's a recreational event, I always try to sprinkle education in there. So I like to tell our participants about the dangers of aquatic invasive species and make sure they know about this, whether they're avid boaters or new to paddling. Because it's really our priority to prevent this spread through community education and engagement. As we've mentioned, it's a very costly issue, this hydrilla, so we want to prevent it from getting to other places as well. So we really want to make sure that we're not letting it spread throughout the watershed or regionally. Hydrilla is just one of many aquatic invasive species that threatens our waterways, so we need to prevent other non-native plants that aren't here yet from entering into our ecosystem. And the best way that we can do that, like Wendy mentioned, is clean, drain, dry. It just takes a few extra steps and a few extra time, but it really protects our wildlife. It keeps our waterways clean for fishing and boating, and preserves our Connecticut River for generations to come. I have a whole bunch of stickers that you can stick on your boat or trailer if you want them later. Just a little reminder. Folks have said that, sometimes I forget, so it's really important to have these reminders. Again, I'm really honored to be here, joined by this amazing team of folks. this work cannot be done alone. So thank you to the team of scientists who's bringing cutting edge research on this plant. Thank you to the boating community for your collaboration. And thank you so much to Senator Blumenthal, Representative Palm, Representative Carney, for not only being here, but for really pushing for funding and bringing attention to this issue. I'm excited to continue to work to protect the Connecticut River and to address this threat. Thank you all.
Thank you, Rhea.
Thank you.
So I'd love to open it up to questions. Before I do, I just want to wrap up what we're hearing. It's taking coordination, expertise, research, money, bipartisanship. And I want to emphasize once again, input, civic engagement from the public. We need you guys up at the Capitol helping us get good legislation passed. My first question, and then I'm going to turn it over to the media, and I would love also members of the public, if you have questions. Reed, I see you, honey. Hang on one sec. Can somebody behind me answer this question, because it might be on the minds of some of the recreational boaters. If you're out in your canoe or your kayak, is it okay to grab this stuff, or in snapping it off, are we making the problem worse? I don't know the answer. Anybody want to take that?
Yeah, I'll answer it.
Thank you, Greg.
So Hydrilla is considered one of the worst invasive aquatic plants for the fact that it has multiple ways of propagating. And one of the ways is fragmentation. So anytime that you fragment it, these pieces can float away and they will create roots, fall to the bottom, and propagate the plant. So again, if you're removing it, fine, but if you're just pulling it and leaving it, it's going to move somewhere else and be a problem.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes, Rita.
I have a question, Christine, for you and for Senator Blumenthal. You talked about $25 million. Is that a bill you've proposed, a bill you're going to propose? What is the status of that money at the present time?
As you may know, we are in the throes right now of appropriation bills for the next fiscal year. Mm-hmm. The House has passed its version. The Senate, where I sit, is working on our bills right now. And my hope is to include that $25 million as part of this year's appropriation bills coming out of the United States Senate. And of course, we have to deal with the House. But I'm hopeful that this amount of money, which is really an investment, we have to view it as an investment in our future. And it's not just our future here in Connecticut, but this Hydrilla is a new genotype. I think there was some reference to it earlier, but there's a University of Wisconsin study that shows this stuff, it's not stupid, it's highly resilient, it spreads, and it evolves to survive. It is among the most survivable and resilient types of wildlife that we know, and it's choking off other kinds of wildlife. But we need to invest that amount of money, and, it really should be more than 25 million. I will be working for more than 25 million. I can't guarantee what it will be, but we're certainly going to ask for the Army Corps of Engineers to be appropriated the money that it needs to do the job.
So this will go through the Armed Services Committee?
It will go through the Appropriations Committee.
Okay, and then?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And one of the benefits of creating on a state basis this new office is that there is now a line item in the budget. So now there is a vehicle for receiving federal, local donations, any kind of money, because as my friends from DEEP, NCAES will tell you, that the appropriations are very, very difficult and terribly needed. Now that we have a vehicle to accept that money, that's half the battle. Any other questions?
What is the correct name
Of
the new committee?
the Office of Aquatic Invasive Species.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, at the Connecticut Agriculture Experiment Station. I mean, they've been doing this kind of work for a while, but now that there's an official office and hires and expertise and that magic line item, we have a funding mechanism.
We'll do our questions separate if it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Any members of the public? This is your chance. We'd love to hear from you. It's fine. I know a lot of you are out there. Yes, Frank. Hi, Frank.
This question may be premature, but are we headed towards some sort of weed killer type remedy? A matter that could become controversial. And I was wondering if any experts care to comment on.
Yes, I'm going to defer to Greg on that. I do know that the herbicide is the thing in question because the benthic mats, which are these large platforms that you have to countersink, are not very efficient, and we want to make sure that it's safe. So, Greg, I'm going to turf that over to you, hon.
So all options are being looked at, but the option of an herbicide I don't think can be ruled out, and more than likely for the extent of the population of hydrilla in the river, it has to be looked at very, very seriously. And I think that that will be certainly on the table. And as I said, the current research that's going on this year with the dye testing, everything, is to try to get as much information as possible. So products that are put forth and scrutinized by the public, I'm sure, will be the safest, least toxic to non-target organisms. But yeah, that could be, it looks like that will be at least on the table, and I think we all are aware of the controversies that can come from this, but without a better option, this I think has to be certainly on the table at this point.
Unintended consequences of any action, any legislation, any scientific experiment are always, the success hangs in the balance of that. And I think Greg is right. We don't have any option other than to explore every possible mechanical harvesting, everything that can be done. Theoretically, it'd be great if we all got out in the river and just plucked this stuff and dove down, but I mean, that's just not realistic. So that's why I asked the question about what can we do as boaters, canoers? Is it okay to actually grab this stuff? Because somebody earlier said, I think Wendy maybe, said somebody grabbed two hunks of it out and that saved the propagation of, it grows exponentially. So that's why I'm going to keep putting the emphasis back on the citizenry to help solve this problem, because prevention is always easier than remediation, whether it's a physical health problem in a human being or an ecological health problem with our environment. Thank you, Frank, for that question. Yes, hi.
Can you address the public health issues of not managing this? For instance, cyanobacteria, and just to sort of balance out those concerns about the use of potential herbicides, I think that it's important for folks to understand that cyanobacteria is also a sort of a byproduct of these hydrilla.
Yes, so thank you. You're referring to this sort of beautifully named Etochthonos hydrolicola, which is actually Greek for, literally, eagle killer that lives on hydrilla. And that is what the toxin I mentioned earlier that causes this brain anomaly. But in terms of, your question is ultimate possible harms to humans? Anybody know about that?
Drinking water. It's a threat to drinking water quality. Hydrilla impacts sources of public drinking water, and it can be a threat in that way to public health.
I think your question is the possible human health problems from the pesticide, from the herbicide.
No, the hydrilla itself, if it's not managed.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it affects water purity, surely. Not to mention mental health. I mean, you know, so much of our mental health comes from being able to recreate on the water. Any other thoughts on that from any of our scientists, people? Yes. Reintroduce yourself, please.
Matt Koklowski from Connecticut Deep Fisheries Division. One thing I'll add about the potential impacts from the cyanobacteria, which is associated with hydrilla, there has to be a certain chemical in the water called bromide to have that negative impact. So I'm not sure if we know whether or not that's a threat in the Connecticut River at this time. Greg, do you have any sense on whether or not?
We don't know yet if it's a threat. We don't see for instance, dying eagles, which has occurred in the South, in the Carolinas, in that area, from this cyanobacteria that is associated with Hydrilla. So we have not seen that here. We are currently working with other researchers in the southern states. They have requested samples from the Hydrilla here in Connecticut. We're going to be sending it down. They've done the work on the cyanobacteria, and we'll know a lot more as we get more results back. But I would expect we wouldn't know until fall at the earliest, once they get their samples and analyze them. So again, I don't see it at the moment here, but there is that possibility, and it has occurred in other states.
Anybody else? I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Thank you all so much. I appreciate all the members of the public who joined us, our local residents, and the expertise gathered here is enormous. We just need to make sure that we fund them, we support them, and we continue to share our resources and our knowledge. Thank you all very much.
Good job.